Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is Pei Vav. We're on 86 in Sanhedrin. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. Um, so yesterday we learned the Mishnah on Pei Hey Amud Bet, which introduced us to the basic principles of kidnapping. Not really telling us how to engage in kidnapping, but what elements a kidnapper must have done in order to be subject to the death penalty associated with kidnapping. So, you wonder sort of like how come kidnapping, at least I believe in the United States, is a capital offense? It could be because of the Judeo tradition. So let's take a look and see what more we can learn about these basic ideas. Again, the Mishnah noted the fact that if one needed to kidnap a Jew, one needed to bring that Jew out of his own location and bring him into your possession. And we referenced the fact that you needed to use him and you needed to sell him. So on some level, this is really, although we call it kidnapping, it is really a prohibition about, stealing somebody to sell them into slavery. That's what it was not the kidnapping in those days was not simply to hold somebody for ransom. That would be a different, on some level, of Avera than what we're talking about. But rather, again, it's more about kidnapping in order to sell somebody into slavery.
Human trafficking.
Human trafficking. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. That's a better terminology. So we are up to 1, 2, 3, 7 lines up from the bottom line. Tanu Rabbanan. So Tanu Rabbanan. Ki yimatzei ish gonev nefesh me'echav. That the pasuk, this is a pasuk in Devarim, Perakav Dalet, pasuk Zayin, which says that if you find a man who's kidnapping another person from his brethren, another soul from his brethren. So pay attention to the genders that are used. The man in this pasuk is the kidnapper himself. And the person being kidnapped, it does not say whether he is male or female. So ainli ela ish shaganav. So that shows that only a man who kidnaps is going to be liable. Isha minayin. How do I know that a woman who kidnaps somebody is also subject to the death penalty? So Talmud Lomar v'gonev ish. Another pasuk. This is a pasuk in Shmo Parakuf Aleph, pasuk Tet Zayin, says, and somebody who kidnaps a man. So the again, paying a very close attention to the usage of gender and gendered words and the nature of it. It's only the gonev is in passive, and so as a result, it can be anybody who steals a man. So as a result, now we know that a woman can be subject to the penalty for kidnapping as well. Well, ainli ela ish ganav ben isha uben ish. Well, when it comes to a man, from our first pasuk, it was clear that it didn't make a difference whether the kidnapped victim was a man or a woman. But v'isha shagan va'ish. And also in the second pasuk, because it says gonev ish, that's what covers a woman. But that pasuk only tells us about a woman kidnapping a man. Isha shaganva isha minayin. How do I know that a woman who kidnaps another woman is also going to be liable to the death penalty? Talmud Lomar umeis haganav hahu. That kidnapper shall die. And mikol makom. And the implication is it doesn't make a difference who the kidnapper kidnaps. We're focused just on the act of kidnapping. And so as a result, by focusing just on the act of kidnapping, it shows that it doesn't make a difference who the victim is. Okay, so that was Baraisa number 1. Baraisa number 2, Tanya Idach, we have another Baraisa. Ki matzei ish gonev nefesh me'echav. Again, using the same pasuk as we saw at the beginning, right? This is pasuk Dvarim Parakav Dalet pasuk Zayin. And what do we say? Echad hagonev es ha'ish ve'echad hagonev es ha'isha. right? The pasuk, again, looking at it from the other direction, right? This pasuk shows, doesn't make a difference whether the person that you're kidnapping is a man or a woman. Ve'echad ger, doesn't make a difference if they're a convert. Ve'echad eved, a mishuchrar, and it doesn't make a difference whether they're a freed slave. The katan, and it doesn't make a difference whether they're a minor, because all of them are a nefesh me'echav. Me'echav implies that they're Jewish, and nefesh implies that they're a soul. So any of those people are going to be covered. Chayav. But ganavo velo mecharo. What if you kidnap somebody but you don't sell them? Because remember, as we saw right in the Mishnah from at the end of the day yesterday, it says v'hit amerbo umcharo, that you need to use him and sell him. And this is a pasuk this is a pasuk Dvarim Parakav Daled pasuk Zion. It's the same pasuk that we've been citing, right? The whole pasuk is the following: Ki yimatzei ish gonev nefesh me'achav mi b'nei Yisrael v'hit amer bo umcharo umeit haganavahu u'v'yar tahara mikirbecha. So the point is that we see that this pasuk itself references usage and selling. So if you don't do the usage and selling, you're not going to be chayiv. It's not to say that you're allowed to go ahead and do the kidnapping. That's not at all true. But you're not going to be subject to the death penalty. Patur. Okay. And mecharov adayin yeshno birshuso. And if you sell the person, but he's still in his own domain, as Rashi says, "Va'adayin yeshno birshuso." Last line on Pei Amud Bet, birshus hanignav atzmo, in the possession, in the property of the victim himself. Shadayin lo hichnisu ganav birshuso, that the thief did not actually, the kidnapper did not bring the victim into his own into the perpetrator's property, and so as a result, he's never really taken possession of the person. So if I go into your home and quote unquote kidnap you there and never take you out and call up somebody and say, listen, I got a great victim here of kidnapping that you can buy as a slave, and he buys you as a slave, I will not have violated the biblical prohibition and will not be subject to the death penalty, because I did everything in your property. Patur. So then the Gemara continues that is a case where we say that you are patur. End of the second to last line on Pei Amud Bet. Mecharo le'aviv o le'achiv. If you sell the victim, and Rashi tells us le'aviv, aviv shel nignav, that if you sell the victim back to his own family. So essentially, that's what a kidnapping arguably is. Ola echad min hakrovim, or any of his relatives. Chayav, our brisa says you're chayav. Now, this is an important element of our brisa, because we are going to be talking about this piece of the brisa, this line, that according to this brisa, if you sell a kidnapped victim back to his family, you are liable for kidnapping and you are subject to the death penalty. That's what we're saying right now. Hagonev es ha'avadim patur. But if you kidnap a slave, then you are exempt. So now we're going to, again, focus back on that line about selling somebody back to his family. So Tani Tanat Kamei de Rav Sheshes. So this brisa was taught in front of Rav Sheshes. Amrlai, and he said, Ani Shoneh, I learned the following: Rabbi Shimon Omer me'echav ad sher yotzienu mirishus echav, that in order to be subject to the prohibition of kidnapping, you have to take him from his brethren, meaning that he may not go back to his brethren. And yet you are saying that if you sell the victim to his father or brothers, namely to his brethren, then you're liable. But you have to take him out of there in order to become liable. So as a result, Rabbi Shimon says that is inconsistent. Now note, of course, the brisa that Rav Sheshes cited was in the name of Rabbi Shimon, whereas the brisa that we cited before that says that you could be liable for selling to your brothers, selling to the victim's brothers, it says it was in the name of no one. It was a stam brisa. So therefore, what does Rav Shesha say? Tanei patur. You should change the language of the brisa that was quoted to him and change it to patur. But the Gemara wonders, my kushya, Dilma ha Rabbi Shimon ha Rabbanan. Maybe we could say that these are two different people. Maybe one is the rabbis, and that was the brisa that was taught to Rav Sheshes, and one is Rabbi Shimon, and that was the brisa that Rav Sheshes cited. No, lo salkadaitik. Don't think that that's in fact the case. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan, because we have a statement of Rabbi Yochanan. Stam masnisin, and this is an important principle to remember because this tells you who the authors are of unattributed statements in Talmudic teachings. So stam masnisin Rabbi Meir. If you have a plain Mishnah, that is Rabbi Meir. Stam Tosefta, Rabbi Nechemia. If you have a Tosefta, that's Rabbi Nechemia. Stam Sifra, if you have something that is a Mishnaic era teaching that is associated with Sefer Vayikra, Rabbi Yehuda, that's Rabbi Yehuda. And Stam Sifrei, that is something that is on Bamidbar and Dvarim, Rabbi Shimon, that's Rabbi Shimon. And so as a result, the Kulo Aliba de Rabbi Akiva, and all of these are students of Rabbi Akiva. But what's the key element here? The key element is that a Stam Sifrei is Rabbi Shimon. And what was our brisa that we cited? Our brisa that we cited was about a pasuk in Dvarim. So it is, in fact, Rabbi Shimon, the same author as the author that Rav Sheshes cited in another brisa. So that explains why Rav Sheshes needed to change the language of the brisa that we had. And that in fact, if you were to sell somebody back to his family, the brisa would say that you are not liable. And indeed, that seems to be the way at least the Rambam would conclude. Okay. So Hagonev Beno. So now we go back to our Mishnah, and in our Mishnah we said that that in fact, if you were to kidnap your son, there was a debate whether you would be liable. Rabbi Yishmael said you would, and the rabbi said you're exempt. So what's the reasoning? So my time of Rabbanan, we can understand why Rabbi Yishmael would say you're liable. Basically, there's no exclusion for kidnapping your son. But why would you think that there would be an exclusion that the rabbis would have? So Amar Abaye to Amar Kra ki yimatzeh, because the Torah says ki yimatzeh, if you found a kidnapping person. So prat lematzoi, it comes to exclude a situation where somebody has ready access to the victim. If you have ready access to the victim, so then we're not going to say that it happened, that you were found doing this, because it's so readily accessible. So Amarle Rav Papa la Abaye Elamiyata. 1 second, if ki yimatze, wherever you find it, means that when you have two people that have ready access to each other, there's not going to be a biblical violation. What about ki yimatze ishochev im isha v'ulas baal? That when you find an adulterous relationship where a man lies with a woman who's married to another person. So hachinami ki yimatze prat lematzoi. Are you telling me that also case would be excluded? Kigon shel beit ploni, like the house of so and so, where basically the shchichan gabayu, where you have basically an apartment building where everybody is living together. So hachinami de petire, you're going to tell me that that's not going to be liable to the prohibition of adultery? That cannot be. So as a result, Amar Le Abaye says back to Rav Papa, no, you heard me correctly, but let me clarify what I really mean. Ana mivinimtsa v'yado kamina. I'm actually trying to highlight that based on the original verse, right? I originally cited you a verse of ki yimatzeh. That is the pasuk in Dvarim, Perek Kavdalid pasuk Zayin. But now I'm going to cite you another pasuk, the Shmot Kaf Aleph pasuk Tet Zayin, where it says where it says v'nimtza biyado, that it was found in his hand. So that phrase is not needed because of our original verse, because of the verse in Dvarim. And so as a result, what does that unnecessary phrase come to teach us? It comes to teach us that, in fact, one who kidnaps his son is not liable. Amar Rava Hilkach, based on this teaching, Hani Mikre Dardiki, Umasnu Rabbanan, that if you are a teacher and you have students that are children, or you're a teacher and you're teaching rabbis, Bimitsuyin biyadan damu, that when, because they're kimitsuyin biyadan damu, it's as if they are readily accessible, and therefore upatire, they will be exempt. So there's no execution if you kidnap a student. Again, not to say that it's permitted, but you would not be executed in that situation. Okay, so the next situation is, we learned in our Mishnah, ganav mi shechetzio, if we stole somebody who is a half-free, half-slave person. So Rabbi Yehuda said that he's liable, meaning that you're subject to the death penalty for such a kidnapping, and the Chachamim say you're exempt. So Tanan Hassam, we have a Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ein avadim boshes. The Rabbi Yehuda says that you cannot be liable for embarrassing a slave. Okay, and now the principle that we are going to apply there, whereas the Chachamim say that you are going to be liable for embarrassing a slave, so the principle that we're going to derive from there is going to apply here as well. So my time at the Rabbi Yehuda Amar Krai ki yinatsu anashim yachdav ish ve'achiv, when two men are fighting one another, a man and his brother. So mi sheyeshlo achava, only if you have. And then the pasuk continues where a woman comes and grabs one of them by their private parts, and as a result has embarrassed him. That's what the Torah's sort of main case of embarrassing, and so, which is pretty embarrassing. And so as a result, you would be liable for monetary damages for that embarrassment. But the nature of it is that they are brothers. There is some kind of relationship. Yatsa eved she'ein lo achva. So embarrassing a slave is different. He's not considered your brother. So as a result, that's why you're not going to be liable. V'Rabbanan achivu b'mitzvos. No, the rabbis who say you are liable for the embarrassing a slave are going to say, no, you are considered the brother of a slave, because a slave is subject to the same mitzvot that a woman is subject to. And so as a result, they are subject to many, many mitzvot. And as a result, they are our brothers in that nature. And so as a result, that is the explanation over there. The hacha, and here we can have a similar kind of approach, because hechi darish Rabbi Yehuda savar me'achav la'puki avadim. So over there, he uses the concept that echav comes to exclude slaves, b'nei Yisrael. So here where we also have echav, right? The pasuk says, "Ki matzei ish gonev nefesh me'echav." So also here we're going to use that word echav to say that we exclude slaves, b'nei Yisrael. And then when it comes and says specifically that the person is echav mi b'nei Yisrael, so now limeute misha chetzio eved v'chetzio ben chorin, that comes to tell us that we should exclude a person who is half slave, half free. But it doesn't just say b'nei Yisrael. It doesn't say echav b'nei Yisrael, but rather it says echav mi b'nei Yisrael. So the mem in that mi b'nei Yisrael, lema'uti misha chetzio eved v'chetzio ben chorin, it comes to teach that same principle, that we should exclude a half-slave, half-free person. But that is havi miyut achar miyut. In the Torah, when we have one exclusion following another exclusion that does the same basic thing, ein miyut achar miyut el rabos. That comes to tell us that, in fact, instead of excluding that thing, we should include it. And so as a result, that's how Rebbe Yehuda says that we do include the liability for a half-free, half-slave person, because that person is not going to be excluded from in the pasuk of Ki Matzei Ish Gonev Nefesh. So all right, so that we now understand why Rabbi Yehuda takes his position. V'Rabbanan, how do the Rabbanan explain this verse so that it not only excludes slaves, but excludes a half-free, half-slave person as well? So meyachav la puki avadim lo mashmalahu. Again, we already saw in the case of embarrassment that when it comes to the word echav, that does not exclude slaves, because daha echav hu b'mitzvot, because he's his brother when it comes to performing mitzvot, because slaves are subject to more mitzvot than a non-Jew. B'nai Yisrael, so now we have B'nai Yisrael is one exclusion, Mi B'nai Yisrael, and we have Mi B'nai Yisrael as a second exclusion. Chad L'Ma'ute Eved, one comes to exclude a full-fledged slave. V'chad L'Ma'ute Mishachatzio Eved V'chatzio Ben Chorin, and the second one comes to teach us that not only is the slave excluded, but also somebody who is half-free, half-slave. So now that we've done the background on who's liable and what and for whom you would be liable for engaging in kidnapping, now the Gemara goes back to say, we have seen this principle before, that in addition to having a pasuk that tells us what the penalty is, and here it does say, Umeit haganav hahu, uviarta haram kirbecha, that he's going to be killed. Wow. So we know that he's going to be killed, but we always need a second pasuk to tell us that you're not allowed to engage in this behavior. So azhara legonev nefesh minayin. How do I have a Torah-based rule that says that you're not allowed to engage in kidnapping? Rabbi Yoshia Amar milo tignov. That it's not, that it is from the 10 Commandments. In the 10 Commandments, we have lo tignov, often translated as you shall not steal. Now, you might have thought that meant that you shouldn't come along and steal my briefcase. You shouldn't come along and steal my computer. You shouldn't come along and steal my possessions.
Right.
But no, we're going to see in a moment the basis for saying that commandment, even though, again, 99.9% of the people out there in the world think that it refers to general theft, you are now part of the core 1% who know that actually that is not a prohibition of general theft, it's a prohibition of kidnapping. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, and Rabbi Yochanan says, Milo yimachru mimikeret aved, that you can't sell in the manner of a slave. Now that verse is talking about saying that a Jewish servant is not allowed to be sold on the auction block, and so that also is an element of the kidnapping, because remember, one piece of the kidnapping is not just the taking of the person, but you also have to then sell the person. V'lo pligi, and the Gemara tells us that Rabbi Yoshia and Rabbi Yochanan are not arguing, meaning they agree with each other's position. Mar kachashav lav de Geneva, when Rabbi Yoshia was telling us about lo tignov, he's focusing on the act of taking the person, that particular piece of the act. Umar kachashav lav de mechira, and Rabbi Yochanan is focusing on the prohibition of selling the guy, because both elements are necessary for there to be a death penalty case. And so as a result, that's how we learn it. We learn it from those two pieces. But the key is lo tignov is going to mean actual kidnapping. And now we're going to cite a brisa that highlights that exact fact. Tana Rabbanan. Lo tignov begonev nevajos kakasa medaber. That when it says in the 10 Commandments, you shall not steal, it's talking about kidnapping. Ki ata omer begonev nevajos. You're going to tell me that it means kidnapping? Oh, maybe it should just mean stealing a person. Amarta seyulma. No, you can tell back to anybody who says that. Here's what you say. Say ulmad mishloshas remidos hatorah nidreshes behen. Every morning we say Rabbi Yishmael Omer b'shloshas remidos hatorah nidreshes behen, that there are 13 principles from which we derive the various laws in the Torah, and one of them is davar halamed inyano, that you can learn about something from its context. So, what is the 10 Commandments talking about? Well, the first commandment is you shall not murder. And then you shall not have adultery. And then it's you shall not steal. Well, those first two are talking, and then it says that you can't testify falsely. Those first two and the next one all are potentially capital crimes. And so as a result, binefashos, all of them are capital crimes. So afkan binefashos. So too here, we're going to say that this is also a capital crime. And so that is the basis. So now not only do you know that stealing in the Ten Commandments is actually the capital crime of kidnapping, but you know why it needs to be interpreted that way, because the context is clear that those crimes are in fact capital crimes. Now, I will note that the fifth of those of the left side of the luchot of the side of luchot that has been adam lechavero is jealousy, and so that is not necessarily a capital crime. Obviously, it can lead to capital crimes. And so maybe it's there in order to highlight that even, that you have to be careful of it because it can lead to the other four. But in any event, I just note that it's not, don't think that therefore all of the 10 commandments are therefore capital crimes. I will note that essentially all of them can be viewed as, again, with the one exception of the 10th commandment you can say that all of them either are capital crimes or some version of them are capital crimes, because we've seen that hitting a parent, cursing a parent, those are elements of respecting one's parents, and lead to the death penalty. So certainly there are elements, and of course the first three relate to Kadosh Baruch Hu, and the fourth is Shabbos. So you can say that effectively the first nine all are capital crimes on some level. All right, Tanya Edith, we've got another brisa that again goes in the other direction, because now that we've told us that lo tignov is a capital crime in the 10 commandments, what about in other places in the Torah where it says lo tig, similar kind of language, specifically, in Perek Yud Tet, Pasuk Yud Aleph of Sefer Vayikra, it says lo tignovu, begonev mamon hakasam medaber. And here the brisa tells us it's not talking about somebody who steals a person who kidnaps. But ata omer begonev mamon, you tell me it's talking about somebody who's stealing money. Oh, einu ela begonev mishvashos. Maybe it should be talking about kidnapping, just like it talks about kidnapping in the 10 Commandments. So Amarta, you respond, say ulmad mishlosh esrei midos shatorah nedres behen dabar halem lamed. Again, we can use that same principle of looking at the context. And there we can see the context. What's the context over there? B'ma kasam medaber b'mamon. There, the Torah is talking about various monetary transgressions. Afkan b'mamon. So as a result, lo tignovu over there is also monetary. Okay. So, all right. So now we've seen that there are two steps to committing the crime of kidnapping: taking the person and selling him. So the Gemara is now going to address what happens if there are two sets of witnesses. One set that saw the taking, and another set that saw the selling, and they all become zomamin. Are they all subject to the death penalty? Or do we say, look, these two, when they testify about the stealing, they could not, just that would not have caused the person to die. And these two testify just about the selling, that could not have caused the person to die. And so as a result, they won't be subject to the death penalty. So those are the arguments in both direction. And it might not surprise you that we have a machlokas. Itmar. Edi geneva ve'edi mechira benefesh shehuzmu, that when you have somebody who are witnesses to the theft and witnesses to the sale of the soul, and then they become edim zomamin, Chizkiah Amar einer ragin. Chizkiah says they don't get killed because, again, each of them individually couldn't do the job on their own. And Rabbi Yochanan Amar neheragin. Rabbi Yochanan says they are killed. Chizkiah da Amar karebi Akiva da Amar davar v'lo chatzi davar, because Chizkiah says, listen, you have to testify to the whole thing in order to be subject, not just half the thing. And Rabbi Yochanan Amar Kirabanan, Rabbi Yochanan says like the rabbis, the Amre Davar Ba'afilu Chatzi Davar. No, if you testify to a material component of a material element of the crime, you are going to be subject to the same penalty as if you were a key element of it. So on some level, one is focusing on, are you a but-for cause? And the other says, are you a sufficient cause? No. And those are different attitudes. And so that's the question that we have. Now, the Gemara adds that Chizkiah agrees that the final witnesses regarding a ben sorer umoreh, remember, a ben sorer umoreh is somebody who steals from their parents and then eats their uses the money to buy meat and wine, right, and eats that outside of their parents' home. And so there are two elements. There's the stealing and there's the eating. But in addition, we saw that the first time that the child does that, we do not kill him. The first time we give him lashes. And that effectively serves as a warning to him that if he does it again, he'll be subject to the death penalty. So when you have the second time that he engages in that misbehavior and he steals and he eats, and you have witnesses who only saw the second time, they didn't see the first time. So in that situation, even Chizkiah, who says that when you only see if you only see the stealing, or you only see the eating, the selling when it comes to kidnapping. When it comes to kidnapping, Chizkiah says that if we separate the stealing and the selling, and you only see either the stealing or the selling, you're not going to be liable because they're only a half a matter. So as a result, but when it comes to a ben sorer umoreh, where you have witnesses who see the stealing and the eating, of the meat and the wine, and they only see the second. They never saw the first. In that situation, we are going to say sheneh haragin, that if they become discredited because they become edim zomamin, we're going to kill them. Because the first witness can say, listen, as we turn to Pei Vav Amud Bet, lahal koto banu. We only came to give the guy lashes. V'hani achrine kulei davar kavdile. They did the whole thing. Don't blame us at all, right? And so Maskif la Rav Papa. Rav Papa asks a question on this whole understanding. Ihachi edi mechira nami liktlei. Why don't we kill the witnesses who just saw the selling? They could because we mitosha yachulu edi genever lomar lahal koto banu, because the witnesses to the kidnapping itself that never saw the post kidnapping sale, they could say, listen, we only came in order to give the guy lashes. So because of this question, we've got to reread our understanding of the machlokas between Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan. And therefore, v'chitema de kasavar of Chizkiah de lo laki v'ha itmar. So if you, and now in second, first, before we come to trying to give another answer to the understanding of the machlokas, there's a quick answer that the Gemara has thought of that maybe will work, and the Gemara is going to reject it. Now, if you want to say, maybe Chizkiah would say that the kidnapper does not get lashes when, for the initial stealing. And so since the kidnapper does not get lashes for the initial stealing, the original witnesses cannot say that they were there in order to give the guy lashes. But that can't be. V'ha itmar, because we have the following statement. If you have witnesses that just saw the stealing of the human being, and then they became Edim Zomamin, Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan have an argument. Chad amar loken, v'chad amar ein loken. One says that they get lashes, and one says that they don't get lashes. Oh, so maybe it's Chizkiah who says that they don't get lashes? It can't be. V'amrinan tistayim de Chizkiya de Omer Damer Loken. It must be that Chizkiya says that they did get lashes. Mid Amr Chizkiya ain't rugin, because after all, Chizkiya is the one who says that the Adim Zomamin don't get lashes. They don't get the death penalty if they did get discredited for Hazama. De'i Rabbi Yochanan, because if it was Rabbi Yochanan who came into Amar Neheragin, he says that the Adim Zomamin do get the death penalty. And if they get the death penalty, Habale Lav Shanitan La'azharas Misas Beistin. Now it means that the sin to which they are testifying about is a sin for a court-imposed execution. The kol lav shenitin la'azharas misas beitin, and any prohibition that is based on an idea that we would give the person the death penalty, ain lokin alav. We don't give lashes. So it must be that Chizkiah is the one who says you get lashes, because Rabbi Yochanan would be the one who says you don't get lashes. So as a result, we now have this really good question on Chizkiah. Why would he say that the witnesses to the sale are exempt? He should say that they are subject to the death penalty. And so as a result, Rav Papa, so Ihu lo lucky. And so if in fact the kidnapper does not get lashes, Inu hechilaku, how could the Adam Zomerman get lashes? So as a result, we have to say Ella Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa changes it and says the following: Be'edi mechiri dekuli almalo pligi dehaneragin. Everybody agrees that when it comes to the sale and the witnesses who just saw the sale, that they will be executed. Ki pligi, where is the disagreement between Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan? It's be'edi geneva. It's only if you saw the first step of the process. Chizkiah Amar ein neragin. Chizkiah says that you are not going to kill those Edim Zomamin. Geneva lechuda kaima umachira lechuda kaima, because the kidnapping is its own issue and the sale is its own issue. And Rabbi Yochanan Amar neragin, and Rabbi Yochanan says no, you are killed. Geneva atchalta de mechirahi, because the kidnapping is the beginning of the sale, and so as a result, it's all one action, and so as a result, we're going to say that it's all going to be both sets of witnesses, though the witnesses to the kidnapping and the witnesses to the sale will all be executed if they become Edim Zomamin. Umoda Rabbi Yochanan, but Rabbi Yochanan would agree Be'edim harishonim shel ben sora umora shehuzmu, that if in fact a son for the first time went out and stole and ate meat and drank wine, and you have witnesses who came and say that they saw it, but then it turns out that they become Edim Zomamin, those witnesses, even though that is a necessary first step to eventually killing this Ben Sorer Mora, we will not say that they are subject to the death penalty. Rather, they can say that they came only to cause the guy to be subject to lashes, and therefore they would not be subject to the death penalty. They are not going to be killed. We came just to give the guy lashes. Amar Abaye. Now Abaye is going to use this as an opportunity to make three statements, and the three statements are basically summary points of what we've just seen. And the statements are catchy. You'll see what I'm saying. Hakol modim beven sora mora. Everybody agrees when it comes to ben sora mora. The hakol modim beven sora mora. And you know what? They also agree with respect to ben sora mora. Machlokes ben sora mora. And there's a disagreement, meaning that there are two elements of agreement, and that he's referring to between Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan, and there's one element of disagreement. So now he explains the three situations. What's hakol modim beven sora mora? Everybody agrees with respect to ben sora mora. Be'edim harishon she'ein neragin mitoch sheyachol lomar lahakol sobanu. Everybody agrees when it comes to ben sora mora that if you have the first set of witnesses who only saw the ben sora mora do the stealing and the eating the first time, they did not see the second time, and they testified to the fact that they saw the first time, but then it turns out that they're Edim Zomim. They were somewhere else at the time. They could not have actually seen it, and so they are not going to be killed. They are going to, presumably they'll get lashes, because they could say, listen, we came only to give this kid lashes. We didn't try to kill him. And everybody agrees with respect to the second set of witnesses that are going to now come and cause this Ben Soromora to get killed, that he's going to get killed. Because the first witnesses can say, listen, our job was done with the first set. And this is a completely separate action, and you are the ones that are fully to blame for trying to cause this person's death. Vahani kule davar avdile. And these, the second witnesses, are really doing the whole thing. And that's why everybody's going to agree that the second set of witnesses is going to be executed. Umachlokas beven sorer umora, shnayim omrim b'fanenu ganav, ushnayim omrim b'fanenu achal. No, but where is the disagreement? The disagreement between Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan is when you have two witnesses who say they saw just the stealing and two witnesses who saw just the eating. So when it comes to that situation, so according to, and now they become Edim Zomamin, so now according to Chizkiah, of course they're going to be exempt because they did not see the whole thing. And according to Rabbi Yochanan, they're going to be liable because even a half of a matter is sufficient. Okay, let's just get up to the Mishnah, and with that we'll conclude. So Amar of Asi, Ede Mechira Benefesh Shehuzmu Ein Neheragim. When you have the Gemara is now going to discuss a case where there are only witnesses to the selling, and the witnesses become Zomamin. So this is sort of like a modification of what we just talked about. So if we have witnesses to the sale of a person, and those witnesses become Edim Zomamin, and the Rashi tells us, Edi Mechira Benefesh, below bo Edi Geneva al Kach Lefanenu. And nobody came to tell us that the person that that they saw the victim being taken. So as a result, ein neragin. Right. These witnesses to the sale are not going to be killed. Because the kidnapper can say, Avdi Macharti, I sold my slave. This is, what are you talking about? Of course I'm allowed to do what you just saw. So that's why I didn't care when you gave me a warning, because this is totally fine. So I'm Rabbi Yosef, Kaman Azla Hashmata de Ravasi. Who is Ravasi following? Rabbi Akiva. It seems like it's following Rabbi Akiva. Da'amar davar v'lo chatzi davar. It seems like he's following the fact that you need to have a full testimony and not a half testimony. Amar le Abaye. Abaye says to Rabbi Yosef, 1 second, de'ikar rabbanan neharagin. Well, 1 second, are you going to tell me then that according to the rabbis, these witnesses would be killed? Hamitoch kamar. But he had an excuse. He had an argument that that seems like a good argument, that actually this guy was his slave in the first place, and that's why he was allowed to sell him. Ella afilu tema rabbanan. No, you can even say that Rav Asi is following the rabbanan. Ubidlo asu edi geneva, and it's dealing with a case where the witnesses to the kidnapping never came. So 1 second, ihachi ma'ila memra. If there are no witnesses to the kidnapping that ever come to court, why would we ever think that witnesses to the sale would cause somebody to be subject to the death penalty, and therefore when the Eidim becomes Zomamin, that they would be subject to the death penalty? We would never kill somebody just because these witnesses came and said that they saw somebody sell a person, because maybe in fact the person was the guy's slave. So lo tzricha de afal gaf de asu lebasof. We're dealing with a situation where eventually there were witnesses that came and said that the guy sold the person, the guy kidnapped the person. And so as a result, here's what happened. So Stan and I come and we testify about Shloimi, that he stole Yaakov and sold Yosef and sold Yosef into slavery. It was that Reuben and Shimon, they sold Yosef into slavery, or Yehuda and Shimon sold Yosef into slavery. And then we only do the sale. We didn't see any of the kidnapping, okay? And so now, and then what happens? But after that, now two other witnesses come and they say, we saw Shimon and Yehuda steal Yosef. So now you put our two witnesses together, and we're gonna kill the guy. We're gonna kill Shimon and Yosef. So v'akati mai lememra. But so the avagav the also lebasov, that even though they came to at the end, so then we would say that that maybe so maybe we should say that they're going to be liable to the death penalty, and therefore we'll say no, they're not. But when second, the Gemara asks, meaning take a look at Rashi, first of the Y lines in Rashi at the bottom of the page, near the middle of the Y line. When Stan and I testified initially, lo hayahadin roi ligmar, the case was not subject to completion, and so it could not be completed based on our testimony alone. Al PM, based on our testimony. Lomar, and so therefore we have the ability to say, Lo hainu yedudin sheyavo edi geneva aleinu. We didn't know that people would come and turn our testimony, which had nothing to do with any kind of death penalty or anything like that, and make us into witnesses to a capital case. We had no idea. And Tosfos suggests that maybe they were testifying just because they thought it was a financial case, a monetary case, and they could. But in any event, the bottom line is that we could testify. We could say that we didn't realize that our lives were on the line. So lo tzikra de kamaramze muramuze. Now we're dealing with a situation before we testify, the witnesses against Shimon and Yehuda for kidnapping Yosef come in and give us a wink, wink, nod, nod, and say, by the way, we're going to come in and say that we're going to testify about the kidnapping. So Mao Detema Remiza Milsi, I might have thought that knowing that they are going to testify eventually about the kidnapping would make us liable for testifying about the stealing if it turns out that we're the Edom Zomerman. Kamash Milan Remiza Lav Klumhu comes to tell us that in fact some kind of signaling is not in fact has no legal significance and therefore is not going to cause us to be liable as Edom Zomerman for the death penalty. So that brings us to the next Mishnah. The next Mishnah discusses the third sinner executed by strangulation, and that is the elder who rebels against a ruling of a court. So what exactly is involved in that rebellion against a ruling of a court? You'll have to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. Again, tomorrow it will be Zoom only at 7 o'clock. Wishing everybody a Freilich and Purim. Also, next week, Wednesday and Thursday, I will be out of town. Dove will be covering for me. And so as a result, that will also be Zoom only, Wednesday and Thursday. God willing, Friday morning, I will be back. And looking forward to continuing our learning together. I think we'll be beginning Perek HaChelek around then, so that's very exciting. We're looking forward to that. Have everybody a wonderful, wonderful day. Looking forward to continuing our learning together.
Thank you.